Hi, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of The Wall of Champions, an F1 podcast, sometimes featuring Greg. So this is going to be, this is episode one of our podcast here. We're three people who somewhat enjoy Formula One and consider ourselves to be somewhat knowledgeable. So we thought we'd put together a podcast and just share what we think. I'll introduce everybody, starting with Luce. Luce, you may introduce yourself.
Howdy. I don't exactly know what else to say other than I suppose I've been following Formula One since '99. Yeah, that's it.
Very good. And how about you, Greg?
Yeah, hello everyone. I've been following Formula One for a while too, since I can remember, since I was little. My first memories probably remember playing Nigel Mansell's Formula One World Championship on the SNES.
Cool. Old school.
I had that. I played that.
Did you play that?
Yeah, I played.
That was sick.
I remember playing the Senna game on the Game Boy.
Oh, the Senna game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was back when World Champions were really stuck up and made their own games rather than there being a dedicated Formula One game that had all the drivers licensed in one spot.
A universal license. And mate, I've been following F1 for like 10 years. No. I've been following Formula One for, how old am I now? I got older last week, so I've been following F1 for,
since the 50s.
Since it started. No, I'm not quite that old. But
What was it like when the Germans were dominating in the 30s, Webby?
Well, I mean, it was really weird to see the car shop with no paint on them, right? like that just wasn't something that we were used to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, no, it was, I've been following F1 since, I think about the turn, I remember the 88 season and the 87 season. I remember Senna going to McLaren, so, they're sort of my earliest memories, of the sport, and then obviously been following since then. Hardly missed a Grand Prix since it actually became a regular on Australian television, so.
And then irregular on Australian free-to-air television.
But, look, I mean, I always said when it was only on free-to-air in Australia and it was sporadic and garbage, that if they ever had a pay TV platform in Australia where they showed all the sessions, that I would happily sign up and pay for it. And I've lived by that. So, it's good. And I'm glad we can get all the sessions in Australia. It just sucks that you have to pay such an exuberant amount of money for it.
Sold your soul to Rupert.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you, Lord Rupert. So basically, what we wanted to do with this podcast is just sort of chew the fat a little bit and talk about the sport. We'll play a little bit of catch up in this episode, and then after that, we'll sort of just concentrate on doing a review of the race just gone. So obviously, the aim will be to do one of these after every race, do a preview of the race that's coming next, and discuss any news that might be floating around at the moment. So we'll start with a quick chat about what we think of the season so far. Obviously, we're 6 races in. We've had the Australian Grand Prix, Chinese Grand Prix, Bahrain, Russia, Spain, and Monaco, and just have a bit of a chat about how we think the season's going so far. I think for the most part, I think it's going better than we all expected. Yeah,
much better. I was unfortunately expecting to see another Mercedes romp fest, but thankfully that hasn't happened. A lot closer.
As a Ferrari fan, it couldn't have gone better.
You could.
I'd like to see more of it.
You could have won every race.
We could have, but
can't ask for everything.
Can't ask for everything. So.
No, I think we're I think we're all very happy with the way the season's gone so far. That it's been competitive. It would be better, obviously, if there were three teams fighting for wins rather than just Mercedes and Ferrari. But this is certainly an improvement of anything we've seen since 2014, and I think most Formula One fans would agree with that. Merely because it's good seeing multiple teams fighting at the front.
Then again, there is a lot of people out there that are upset that there's not as much overtaking, but I think I'd rather have 2 teams be a little bit more dominant than having one team that's that's smashing everybody and there's people passing others in the midfield.
I think it's been a more pure contest here.
Yeah, I think that people's want for overtaking is a little bit different from what Formula One actually really is. I mean, Formula One's never been a sport about lots of overtaking. Certainly not from my memory.
But, well, certainly since I've started watching in '99, it's never been about overtaking. It's more about teams putting together a competitive car, the best car in the world, trying to get race wins and win the championship. It's not been about putting on a show per se for the fans.
Yeah,
Sport
yeah,
more than a show.
yeah. I mean, it's a Formula series, right? Not a spec series. So you expect that the Formula is going to be based around who builds the best car, and you go from there. Where obviously a spec series is where you tend to see lots of overtaking and the like.
Yeah, and then people sort of point to MotoGP because that's, I guess, similar, but I don't think people realise motorbikes have a lot different aerodynamic
Not even.
differences.
It's not even aerodynamic. It's just their braking distances are enormous.
Yeah, and that's right. For the reason that you don't see so much overtaking in Formula One is because generally, they're at the limit of braking. And so for somebody to outbrake somebody by 10 meters generally has huge repercussions. It takes more than just balls to get it done. Like generally what's going to happen is you're going to get to the corner and you're going to be going too fast. So, and obviously, excuse me, but the other big difference about Formula One, of course, is that the cars are pretty weak when it comes to contact. So there's that whole saying, rubbin's racing, man, but not in Formula One. Rubbin ain't racing in F1. If you're rubbing in Formula One, you're probably heading to the scene of the accident. To quote Martin Brundle,
You can drive with a broken suspension arm, you'll be fine, mate.
I'd like to see you try it.
Oh, come on, Vettel finished with half a car at Brazil in 2012. It's possible.
Won a championship with half a car.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh dear. All right. Well, we might just get stuck straight into it and just sort of recount our memories for the first 6 races. I know that it's sort of dating back a few months now, but we can power through this pretty quickly. The Australian Grand Prix was obviously the first place where we saw that we may actually be in for a competitive season. I mean, obviously last year Ferrari were in with a big shout of winning the Australian Grand Prix until they got caught out by the red flag and didn't change their tyres. A number of strategic missteps from Ferrari that were made in 2016. But this year, they actually showed up with legitimate pace. So I think it was a surprise for everybody. What were the key moments for you guys at the Australian Grand Prix?
Well, in qualifying, it didn't look like it. Hamilton had a couple tenths on everybody, and Bottas is faster than Kimi, way off the pace.
I think the key moment was when goodness, what did they do? They pitted Hamilton early, didn't they?
Yep, and he got stuck behind someone.
And it was the first sign that that since the Mercs aren't racing each other, they're actually racing another team, and they don't know what that other team's going to do strategy wise. They were forced into a mistake. That was the first good sign, I think. It was what we all suspected, really, that as soon as that team was put under pressure, they'd start making strategic errors.
And we saw glimpses of that in 2014, where they'd made a couple really bad mistakes strategy-wise.
Yeah.
And they were able to get away with it with their car being a second and a half faster than everybody else. And at Melbourne...
Yeah, so I think it was Sainz, wasn't it? He got stuck behind Sainz after his first stop, if I remember rightly.
Sainz and Verstappen, I think he got stuck behind.
Yeah.
And I think Vettel was hiding. They were hiding their true pace, really. They were hiding it, and once he was in clear air, he was able to unleash it a bit.
Actually, what he did to Hamilton in Australia was quite reminiscent of how his race unfolded at Monaco. Obviously, we'll get to that in the future. But it was, even though it was against a different team rather than just his teammate, but it was very, very similar result for Vettel.
Yep. No, he seems to be very good at it. It's very Schumacher-esque. It's something I didn't think we'd see once refueling was banned, but he's pulling it off because the tyres aren't wearing out so much this year.
Well, I don't think it was so much Ferrari hiding it or Seb hiding his pace. I think it was just that the Ferrari's just been... We saw it in testing, and we've seen it through the races so far, is that the Ferrari's much better on its rear tyres in particular than what Mercedes have been.
Yeah, it's quite possible. Yeah, I think it's the quickest race car. and it's looking even more so now. It's the quickest car in qualifying as well. So
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that. I mean, obviously, Canada, where we're heading to next, is much more of a power circuit than a few of the places we've been so far, probably with the exception of Sochi. So we may see Mercedes come back a little bit, but we'll get to a Canada preview in a bit. But yeah, I mean, just looking at that, Hamilton stopped on lap 17 in Australia, and then Seb stopped on 6 laps later on 23. So yeah, that was that was probably what I found as well. Was first of all surprising just how strong of a race car Ferrari seemed to have. But I was like loose after qualifying. I was thinking, here we go again. Mercedes are gonna, Mercedes has still got margin on the field. So it was really good to see Ferrari actually come back. So looking at the results from Melbourne, where you had Vettel and Hamilton and Bottas on the podium. So obviously still a good result for Mercedes, although probably more than anything, it was a strategic misstep that cost them that race. But Ferrari did have true pace. So obviously that was a good thing for us as fans to see. Looking a bit further down the pack, Red Bull are clearly third best car by some margin back and by some margin ahead.
They're on their own at the moment, and I can't see them catching up, and I can't see anyone catching them. So they're in for a lonely year, I reckon.
Yeah, they look lost. They look lost aerodynamically. I mean, I can't say they look lost. It seems that they look lost and don't know what to do to get themselves out of it. Which is surprising because we all picked them for the team that was going to build the best car this year.
Yeah, obviously there's been a bit of finger pointing since then about whether it's whether Nui wasn't committed enough to this car or something like that. But I think the biggest thing that surprised me in Australia was how plain and simple the Red Bull looked compared to all the other cars. Particularly the Mercedes was pretty much a work of art in terms of how much aero work had gone into that car.
It was a spaceship in comparison.
Yeah, and the Red Bull looked like something Minardi used to roll out, in the 90s and 2000s in terms of really plain aero.
Well, everybody saw the release of the Red Bulls. Like, this is really basic, and we were all expecting it. Australia, they'd come on and there'd be, half the car would be sawtooth and there'd be 50 million add-ons to the front wing and side pods and all that stuff, but we just haven't seen it.
We thought they had last year's barge boards, remember, when it launched?
Yeah, true.
They're keeping the cards close to the chest. I'm sure they've got something really, special, but it didn't change at all.
Very true. Very true. And then sort of looking a bit further back, Williams, Force India had a good result. Toro Rosso looks like an improved team this year. So, they're sort of in the top 5. But then you move to the back, and, you're moving past the Saubers and the likes, and you get down to your, Renault. Renault's a one-car team at the moment, but I'm sure we'll cover more of Polygon as we go forward. Polygon Palmer.
We should probably explain that to people who don't know.
Well, you came up with it, so you can explain it.
Well, okay. The nickname Polygon for what his first name now?
Jolyon.
for Jolyon. Jolyon Palmer came about after he's got a bit of a habit of riding off his car or damaging it in some way, and lots of little pieces,
It comes back with more corners than it leaves the garage with.
Exactly. So there we go. There's where old Polygon comes from, and let's hope he's replaced.
Yeah, for sure.
Later, I think
we'll definitely get to that once we get down to the news section with some with the rumors floating around about Renault's driver lineup. And obviously the big disappointment from Melbourne and it has carried on through the whole season so far is the competitiveness or lack thereof of McLaren.
Honda.
Yeah,
I think Honda would. Well, as we saw at Monaco, it's mainly power with that car.
Yeah, I don't think we were surprised, but disappointed.
I don't even think disappointed is the right word. I reckon it's come to frustration now, just how bad that situation is. It's not only slow, it breaks down at every opportunity.
And what about
you? What about you, Greg?
I just came back, but I can only assume that you were talking about the McLaren.
Yes. When you heard the words "not surprised" and "disappointed," you figured it was McLaren.
Yeah. Well, they look like they're on borrowed time, really. Honda, didn't we? I thought we all assumed, or from what we'd heard, or from other Matt, who's not on here tonight,
Yep.
that they're most likely heading towards Mercedes, and I can't really blame them at this point.
Although they have submitted for next year without an engine change, so it looks like they will carry a
McLaren
Honda.
have done that.
Yeah. It looks like they'll carry Honda in the next season. So
They must be awfully confident about the supposed Montreal upgrade that's coming, but
well, I'm sure they can't wait to just race with Sauber next year.
yeah, well, it
They-
hasn't the and there's well that I guess you're going to get to Montreal, but I think that upgrade might have been delayed as well. But yeah, it kind of sounds from what I'd read, and I haven't read much about it since preseason testing. To be honest, I just haven't been reading into it. But I thought that some of their problems were of their own making, where they didn't really talk very much with Honda about how their engine was going to be packaged. And I understand that they had 4 or 5 different options on their engine, like in terms of philosophies. And when McLaren gave them the final design of the car, only one of them would fit. So they've kind of backed themselves into a corner, I think, both Honda and McLaren.
Yeah, it just seems like it's a relationship that's not working right now.
Yeah, like it seems a bit toxic, to be honest. It's heading in that direction.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, we won't hold on Melbourne for too long. Obviously, Melbourne, lots of talking points out of there because it was the first race of the season. And then we had Shanghai, where we saw Mercedes got one back on Ferrari. But it was a good race. So obviously Hamilton beat Seb, and both teams had quite similar pace, if I remember rightly, from China.
Yeah, I think it was pretty close, but Seb was very unlucky with the safety car, wasn't he? So
yes, very true.
He had a chance to win, but didn't he get a bad start or something? I can't quite remember.
Well, it started wet, remember?
Yeah, but I can't quite remember what happened to him. I don't. Yeah, but in any case, the safety car kind of threw his plans. And, it was a recovery drive, wasn't it? He was recovering, I'm pretty sure, Seb, from something. And yeah, but I don't know. It must have been a fairly exciting race. If I can't really remember much about it, other than Seb kind of lost out under the safety car.
Yeah, a whole bunch of them came in on the second lap, and Seb was amongst them. And the Mercedes stayed out until lap 4. And that allowed the Mercedes to get, if I remember rightly, to jump Ferrari.
That sounds about right.
I missed, I think, half the race. I was busy, so I can't really comment. I
was starting to think we were seeing the Seb of old, though, because he put on some great overtakes. Remember that one around Ricardo, and he was going around the outside and all these places. It was a good race for Seb. That's all I remember.
He passed Kimi around the outside as well at turn 6, wasn't
it? Or he dived up the inside, I don't know, but he kind of had to shove him out of the way a bit, I think, didn't he? So he got really aggressive, and it was good to see, actually. It was an exciting race from that point of view.
There were a few really good overtakes.
Yeah.
And they weren't in DRS zones, which is something we hadn't really seen over the last few years.
They were in that right-hander at the end of the first sector, that hairpin corner, and then they'd be side by side out of there into those fast sweepers in the middle sector. And that's where we saw Ricardo and Vettel touch wheels, and it was all very exciting. It was good.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember, obviously Seb got his elbows out against Kimi. And yeah, there were some good overtakes. There's some good battles from the Red Bulls, who finished third and fourth, Verstappen and Ricardo. But what we did see was the start of a creeping trend, which was obviously Kimi didn't have a lot of pace when it came to Sebastian, and he finished a long way off. So did Bottas, but Bottas spun, remember, behind the safety car and lost positions.
Spinning behind the safety car, I think that's more embarrassing than being stuck behind a Red Bull for 40 laps.
I agree, but it was the start of Kimi actually looking not very quick.
He wasn't exactly quick in Australia either.
He wasn't, but he was looking very placid. Like it's like he doesn't have any fight in him, and he's not prepared to really put it on the edge. That's what it kind of looked like. I can excuse what happened to Bottas. That's something that's very easy to do. But Kimi just looks like he hasn't got that killer instinct. But he's never really been a big overtaker, has he? So
Yeah, particularly at Suzuka in 05.
but when you've got a car that's that much quicker than everyone else, I don't recall him ever being an overtaker. He always has these half-hearted looks and doesn't really go for it. And Seb really went for it, and I think that's when we started to see not only pace-wise but also just aggression-wise. Like Seb was really.
Did come on the radio a few times complaining about a lack of power, but
that's the other thing. He's always bitching and moaning on the radio. There's always some kind of horrible problem that he can't do anything about it, and I don't know. I'm a Ferrari fan, but I've kind of lost it a bit with Kimi.
Yeah.
I kind of don't have much more patience for him.
So we mentioned that Red Bull had a good race. Carlos Sainz, who obviously was the only driver to start on a slick tyre, and said goodbye to the field. He said goodbye to the field on the first lap, but managed to come back and finish 7th. And obviously, it was another good race for Force India. They've had a good season, despite the fact that they're saying they're running with a car. Well, up until Spain, that wasn't correlated with their wind tunnel very well.
And it was overweight.
And it was overweight. The Mercedes had that problem as well in terms of weight early in the season. Apparently, they resolved that at Barcelona.
Well, when you make it, shaped like a boat.
And the length of a boat.
And the length of a boat, that's generally what happens.
Didn't they solve that by just not giving Hamilton a drinks bottle? Or a drink? I'm pretty sure he's running without hydration.
Yeah. But what they did, I think they took some of the support out of the suspension that was weighing them down.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So China for the most part was fairly uneventful. I think for the most part so was Bahrain.
I think.
So obviously Seb won in Bahrain with the Mercedes 2 and 3, and Kimi 22 seconds behind his teammate at the flag.
The only thing I remember being a big talking point from Bahrain was the British media carrying on about Hamilton going past Bottas. But
yes.
When I looked at that, I'm thinking, and then they made a big, number 1 driver, number 2 driver. Lewis was going to come past anyway. He was that much quicker.
Yep.
So why not just make it easy? Don't fight, let him through. Like, it made sense anyway. Don't understand why everyone made such a big deal about that, but anyway, that was the main thing I remember from Bahrain. And Bottas had some tire pressure issues or something, and he was a bit tentative.
So Bottas got his first pole at Bahrain.
He did.
Yeah.
He bounced back from Shanghai really well with that, I thought, which gave me I want to see him do well, so I thought that was good.
Of course, you want as many drivers at the front as possible.
Yeah, and I also remember we were talking up Sainz after China and how good is he, and he should replace Kimi or something like that. But he was uncharacteristically bad with he tried that move out of the pits on Stroll
and blamed Stroll
and blamed Stroll.
Yeah.
100%.
So
his fault.
Yeah, we're not one-eyed enough to just immediately blame that on Stroll. So I gave him give him credit where it's due.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think Brundle pointed out that Stroll should have had a little bit more awareness that Sainz was there, but that was 100% on Sainz. Like that was fully Sainz.
How much awareness do you need? You can't have 360-degree vision in one
well,
car. The ball people should know that.
As Stroll put it, he said, "Yeah, I knew he was there. He was way back in the braking zone. I didn't think there was any possibility he was going to put on a move, so I just concentrated on the corner." And that's the right approach. You can't drive an F1 car in your mirrors.
No, you cannot.
So, but yeah, it was so Bottas had his tyre pressure issues, and obviously I think Hamilton went past him twice, didn't he? Or was it only once in the race? I thought the strategy meant that he actually went past him twice.
Possibly.
It might have only been once, but you're right, there was a lot of talk by the British media about Hamilton being superior to Bottas and that, the cream rises to the top and everything like that. The same talk was going on at Ferrari. Kimi was obviously, again, a long way back from Seb and complaining on the radio every 3 seconds about a problem with his car. And outside of that was the usual suspects. Force India again got points. Felipe Massa got a 6th place. He's been a bit of a quiet achiever this year, Massa. That Williams is obviously not as bad as a car as the standings probably show it to be.
It's hard to gauge when the other guy in the car's been pretty bad.
Yep. And
the same with Renault. Like, you don't know how good that car is because both the drivers in the car are just completely different ends of the spectrum.
I want to get to Hulkenberg because I think Hulkenberg's doing a cracking job this year. I think that in terms of a team leader, I don't think Renault could be asking for more than him. He's not making mistakes. He's lost a fair bit of practice time due to car issues, and he's still getting the job done, particularly in qualifying, where it seems like that car has a lot of strength. In the races and the long runs, not so much. So, yeah, he is doing a good job as opposed to his teammate, who tends to. Well, I mean, he's usual.
He's just got bad luck, mate. He's just got bad luck. He just needs a clean weekend and he'll be right.
Yeah. Speaking of the English media.
Yeah, well, his mode tends to be that he does something stupid in practice and damages the car, and then blames the car for being undrivable, and gets the qualifying and says the car was much better in practice and it sucked in qualifying. And the thing I see with Palmer that frustrates me the most isn't so much the fact that he just appears to be slow, but I feel like a driver who refuses to take responsibility for not being on the pace isn't a driver who's going to improve. If you're a driver who sits back and goes, "Nah, it's the car's fault," always the car's fault. Even though my teammate made it to Q3 and I was out in Q1, it's definitely the car's fault. It's not my fault at all. I feel like that's a driver who's not going to push themselves to improve.
Well,
that's probably a good way to sum it up.
Yeah, and we've also seen a year and change on what he can do, and it's not very much.
For sure.
No, it's more of the same from him this year. I don't know why they kept him, but...
In fact, I'd even argue it's even worse this year than what it has been. Like, the step up in speed in the cars has really shown that he's not up to it.
And that was... Yeah. And I was going to say, that was something that I did want to bring up a little bit later as well, which is, I think, the cars that can be pushed harder, which we have in 2017, which is a much better situation for everybody in F1, does tend to show the starker difference between the good drivers and the bad drivers.
Yep, I agree with that. And people were complaining in pre-season testing that they looked glued to the racetrack and they were going to be so easy to drive and this and that. And I'm pretty sure at that time I said it's not. They might actually be more glued to the track, but because of that, when they go, they just sort of snap on you and there's no saving them. And Palmer's the one that's been demonstrating that to us all year.
Palmer and Stroll have shown us a couple times that when it goes, it goes.
I would argue, though, that Palmer's oftentimes looked more amateurish than Stroll.
They've also looked really ridiculous sometimes. Like, I honestly thought something in the back of the car broke when he crashed at the last corner in Australia. He had that really
Palmer,
weird.
Yeah.
That was really weird, that one.
It was.
But, I can't
no one really
seeing an accident like that.
Yeah, and then obviously Ricciardo had his accident in qualifying at Melbourne as well, where
it was pretty similar.
Yeah, it was, where the car just seemed to hit a certain amount of angle, and then just the rear end seemed to die aerodynamically and spin around.
Wasn't that it was a crosswind or something that caught him out, wasn't it? It would make more sense.
I think he just went a little wide, and then he just demanded too much from the car.
Yeah, I don't know, but they both sort of set the tone. Like, you wouldn't expect, especially Ricciardo, to do something like that.
Yeah, Ricciardo is generally one of those guys who doesn't make mistakes.
Yeah, but he made one at a crucial moment. But anyway,
very true.
The cars look a lot like they have to really. I wouldn't say. I'd say that like the last 3 years they've still had to work with them. It was a lot more technical though, the driving. Like, it was real. I don't know how to describe it, but they looked like they didn't have enough downforce for the power they had, whereas these ones they're just monstrous. You just have to really hang on to them through the middle of the corner.
You can see it, especially with drivers like Palmer and especially with Stroll at Melbourne.
Yeah, Stroll everywhere looks like he's about to have an accident.
Yeah, just hanging on for dear life. If people are listening, watch an onboard of him at Melbourne and just look at his hands. He's
still driving like that. He's still driving like that. The hand, I don't know if he's going for a very loose grip on the steering wheel, Schumi style, but Schumi has a bit more strength. Like, Schumi makes it look effortless, though.
The way he holds it and moves his hands around, it reminds me of the old Minardi drivers and Spiker drivers.
It reminds me of someone who hasn't got power steering. If you go back to like the late 80s and the early 90s, that's what it looks like. It looks like he's not got power steering and he's just hanging on for dear life.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to give him some time to see if he improves, but he doesn't.
Had plenty of time.
He doesn't look like he's improving at this stage. So, it looks like that. I mean, He's bringing a lot of money. What can you say? That's always been a factor.
I think part of his problem was he had that massive private testing program with the Williams, and the problem is that these cars are nothing like that.
Yeah,
I think he's getting caught out because of that.
For sure. All right. Well, we spoke about how Bottas bounced back from his mistake in Shanghai to get pole at Bahrain, and then had a pretty underwhelming race. And obviously, the British media we've already mentioned were pretty quick to come out and say, "Well, it looks like a Mercedes. It's a they're a team. They're a team that
He's going to favour one driver.
Yeah, well, not
number one.
No, less than favouring one driver, and more naturally having a number one driver because one is superior to the other. But then we got to Russia, of course, and Bottas won his first Grand Prix, which I think that everybody says it's always good to see a driver win their first Grand Prix, with the exception of Pastor Maldonado. No, I don't mean that, but to see Bottas actually mug the Ferraris off the start, which as a Ferrari fan must have been difficult to watch, Greg.
Yes,
I was expecting it.
Yeah, but to see him then hold on to the immense pressure that Sebastian put on him, with a little help from his friends.
Yeah, he almost carked it.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he had that big lockup. And just like to welcome Senraku to the stream, who's commented with joined at the right time, as we were getting stuck into Lance Stroll, his countryman. So be thankful you're not British, Senraku. It's going to get worse. So, but no. So that, of course, to feed a narrative, mainstream media style. Obviously, the push from the media was to say Hamilton was clearly superior. The fact that Mercedes had to ask Bottas effectively to get out of his way at Bahrain, and then to say, well, clearly, Hamilton has a turn of speed on Bottas, but then to get to Russia, and for Hamilton to be the one that has the anonymous race, whilst Bottas wins from the two Ferraris.
Who would have thought it? Alternate facts in Russia.
It's the most anonymous race Lewis had, I think, since, I'm trying to think, maybe 2011. Like, he was
he was ragged, wasn't he?
He was just absolutely nowhere. I think he complained of something after the race or on team radio, but it still didn't really excuse him for being 36 seconds off Bottas, who, well, before the season, I wasn't really expecting him to set the world on fire, but he's done better than what I thought he would.
Yeah, he has. I was happy for him, actually, and I kind of had this feeling that he would chip away at it and get, like Nico did. Nico chipped away at it for a few years, and he eventually got under Hamilton's skin.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where Hamilton is clearly naturally a naturally gifted driver.
No doubt.
But he's also made no secret of the fact that he's not one of these guys who's good for track walks or doing a lot of the technical stuff. So if you were playing a game and you were saying, okay, so I've got to go up against this guy and I've got to pick out his weaknesses and his strengths. Obviously, Lewis's strength is going to be on the track. But if you were to outwork him off the track, then that's probably where you can get a bit of advantage back on him. And I think that Rosberg showed that in 2016, that if he outworked, I mean, there was no doubt that luck played a part in Rosberg winning the championship, last year, but luck plays a role every year.
I think Rosberg summed it up himself when he talked about the end of the year, because he said he'd never seen Hamilton work so hard in those last 4 races, and Hamilton was just unbeatable. He was flawless.
Yep. Yeah,
but
for sure.
It makes you wonder, like, well, you're getting a lot of money and you're a naturally talented athlete, sure, but what were you doing for the other, 16 races?
Yeah, so if you've got now you've got a guy like Bottas in the other car who from all accounts is also a tireless worker within the team in terms of looking towards his setup and his engineering, that Hamilton's probably going to have to bring his A game, and probably more than any of us thought that Bottas could be capable of pushing him. So, and if you take into account the rest of the season as well, obviously Hamilton was anonymous at Monaco as well. I mean, I know he had a storming race, and we'll get to that. But Bottas had a good weekend at a track where Mercedes obviously wasn't that strong. So, there's been more than one weekend so far this year where Bottas has been by far and away the best Mercedes driver, and I think that's probably more than what we were probably expecting from him this early in his Mercedes career.
Yeah, just to go back to Hamilton, it's only sort of a general observation, but he seems to be better when he's racing just his teammate. and he's not having to compete with another team. So we seem to be seeing more of the 2010, 2011 Hamilton, who's kind of inconsistent because he's had his moments. He's had his moments this year. Like, you haven't gotten to Spain yet, but
Yep.
that was a brilliant race for him.
It was.
He was lucky, but he's really on and off this year, and it kind of reminds me of how he was in 2010 and 2011 when there was more than one team having to fight. So where even in 07, I know they were fighting Ferrari, but the narrative of that season was Hamilton v Alonso, and he acquitted himself really well in that one-on-one battle.
Yep.
But it seems like when he starts coming under pressure from somewhere other than the other side of his garage, he has a bit of trouble. I don't know what it is. Maybe he loses focus a bit.
I think that's his biggest problem is
Maybe.
his focus.
Yeah,
But-
it could be.
If he weren't British, I dare to say that he'd be coming under a lot more criticism than what he is.
They might make him out to be a bit of a Kimmy.
Well, that's how I see it. Because in 2008, people were like, where is he? Where's the real Kimi Räikkönen? In 2009, and he intensified. You know, he's not motivated. He's lost his focus. When Hamilton this year, to me, he just doesn't seem interested.
Yeah, but that contrast, as Greg said before, that he's still immensely quick, and so on the weekends where he's on. So if you think Australia, if you think Bahrain, if you think China,
Spain.
Yeah, Spain. Like he's still. I don't think it's like he's having a poor season. I just think that there seems to be, and it might not even be a function of him. It could be a function of he and the team trying too hard at races where their car isn't the best car. So they're overreaching on setup. They're going too close to the boundary. And where Bottas might be playing more of a straighter game and just trying to get the car to be comfortable for him, and he's getting the results, whereas Hamilton's pushing the boundary. Who knows? Hamilton is definitely one of the best three drivers on the grid. I don't think any of us could take that away from him. But he does seem to be having a much more inconsistent season. If you compared what we've seen so far, 2017 Hamilton, to the Hamilton of 14, 15, and 16, he's almost like a different driver because he was so consistent in 14, 15, and 16 when, as you quite rightly pointed out, Greg, his only opponent was Nico Rosberg. So whether that lights a fuse under him more than anything else does, and he shows up all of the time, or whether the car flattered him a little bit on the weekends where he had, maybe where he did have a poor weekend, or if maybe he just can't make the car work for him this year because it's just not as a nice car as what it was. That was poor use of English, but it's just not as nice a car as what the previous three have been, and he's struggling with it a little because we have seen in his career when he's in a suboptimal car that he does seem to get a bit lost in the pack a little bit.
But he can also make it work sometimes.
He definitely can. And
one of those guys, even in Alonso's words, that can make it happen.
Yeah, he's a pretty exceptional guy to watch on track. He really is.
I think it's a little bit of everything, isn't it? But I think the focus thing might be what it is because he seems to be very good at just drilling down and focusing on one target and just doing it properly. I guess I don't know how to describe it, but when you've got enemies all around, you get lost, and you're probably overreaching a bit with what he's trying to do with the car and with his setup.
I just wanted to mention another team whilst we were still talking about Russia before we move on to what happened in Spain, was Red Bull. Obviously, Ricciardo's already had a couple of retirements this year, so it's not a good year for him so far. He got his first podium, obviously, last time out in Monaco. Probably a bit fortuitous there with the way the strategy played out. Although he was unhappy with the team strategy in qualifying, but you know this seems like it's going to be probably a very frustrating year to be a Red Bull driver, because you know last year the glimmer of hope was this year, and now this year it's going well. You know they're actually seem to be further behind Ferrari than what they were last year. So even though they may be closer to Mercedes overall, they're more of a distant third and less likely to challenge for podiums on races where the top four cars finish.
I don't think there's much to say about Red Bull that we haven't already said, except that it's going to make the driver market very interesting because Ricciardo really thought, as his helmet paint job says, that this is his time.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think it means it's probably it. I mean, I can easily see someone like Ricciardo heading Ferrari's way.
Well, that's the decision they've got to make.
Yeah, they're going to have to
Red Bull
pick one of them.
Do
Yep.
they keep Sainz or do they keep Ricciardo? Because
Yep.
one of them
Yep.
will be gone.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see Carlos Sainz signing on for another season at Toro Rosso. I just don't see it happening. He's gonna have offers. Like, he'll have offers from up and down the grid. I mean, we'll get to this, but there's going to be seats opening up next year at probably Ferrari. You've got to think that this is probably Kimi's last roll of the dice at Ferrari.
Well, Bottas is only on a 1-year contract, isn't he?
Yeah. Mercedes going to extend that. That was the rumor around Monaco that Bottas. Yeah, Bottas will extend it.
The way he's going, they'll extend it. He's doing a good job.
Yep,
he's
sure.
doing good enough.
But there'll be seats probably at Ferrari. There'll be a seat at Renault.
Yeah, but hopefully that gets filled by Kubica, if I have my wish.
Well, we'll get to that because that's on the list of news. Yeah, it is.
Good news.
Good news. Well, so we'll get to that. But Senrako's just said that Merck should renew Bottas. I think we'd be in universal agreement on that. I think Bottas has proved that he's fast enough to worry Hamilton. But it looks like his personality probably means he won't end up grinding against Hamilton.
He's not. He doesn't seem abrasive. He seems kind of like Kimi, but with a bit more charisma.
More charisma? Are you kidding me?
Oh yeah, you don't rate Bottas's charisma.
We just got the car and we finished our race. So it was a good race.
Bottas to me is the most boring race driver that's ever lived.
I don't know. I'm kind of bored of Kimi. I think Bottas is a bit of a breath of fresh air.
Kimi will get angry and he'll give you a soundbite every now and again.
Kimi is just an angry old man.
Yeah.
He's old though. Give him a break.
I know how he feels. All right. So we'll skip on now to Spain. Obviously, we've already mentioned Spain. Spain was a very, very good race for Lewis Hamilton. He got a bit lucky, but you've got to be
racing.
Yeah, that's right. He had a ding dong battle with Seb for the whole race, which was really good to watch. And I've got to say again, as just a general Formula One fan, it was so good to see Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel. The guys the guys who have won. What's that? 7 of the last 10 championships or whatever. Yeah. So it's to see those two going hammer and tong at it. At a track where it usually presents actually quite dull races, Barcelona.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It was a surprise.
It was, and then actually see them banging wheels. And the good thing I've got to say, just before I move on from that, is that it was good to see the stewards refrain from issuing a penalty to Sebastian, for example, for that, because it evened itself out. Seb had him off, and then Hamilton got ahead, and there's no reason to throw a penalty out in that situation.
Yeah, I think if Seb had won that race, the dynamic of them, even in the press conference, would have been totally different, I think. But it worked out in the end best.
Yeah.
But that was a vintage day of Grand Prix racing. I loved that one. That was great because there weren't too many overtakes. It was only a few, but you only need a few for it to be, a classic race.
I think that's what people need to sort of embrace a bit more. Instead of it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. Because not only have we seen some great overtakes, especially from Seb in that race where he did the triple switchback and shades of Rosberg, I think Kiki Rosberg or whoever at Silverstone.
Nigel on PK.
Yeah, that's the one. We also saw Seb with some great defending, and then obviously Hamilton, taking the lead, and that's not something we've really seen in a long time, where there's been an actual overtake for the lead.
Ugh. You wouldn't read about it, and this year of all years. It was vintage. It was great. That was probably the best race of the year from mine.
Yeah, and then obviously we had Bottas and Raikkonen retire from the race, which obviously opened up the door to. I made a mistake before. I thought Monaco was Ricciardo's first podium, but he actually got third at Spain as well, which is actually right. But it also
you wouldn't know it because you're so far behind.
Yeah, but it also enabled the salmon-coloured cars to finish 4th and 5th. So Force India seem to be having a pretty good run. Their driver lineup actually seems quite impressive.
They're a good mix, those two drivers.
Yeah, I think that and we've mentioned it, previous in the year, that Ocon is very, very impressive, and the way he's going at the moment, he could catapult forward in the driver market to be matching Perez the way that he has been. I mean, I know they both had dirty races at Monaco, but Ocon's finished every Grand Prix he started, and so he's very, very reliable set of hands, and he's proved this year that he's not far off pace in terms of a guy like Perez, who's obviously very experienced.
Perez has to be a little worried about that, I think, because if Ocon can get on terms with him or even match him and beat and best him, then it's really bad time for Perez to lose some stock. Because his stock was on the rise for a while.
Well, it's not so much that his stock will drop or anything. It's just that
if he wants to go to a top team,
I know, but Ocon will take those seats away from him.
Yeah, at a time when Ferrari are looking at a new driver next year, this is a poor time for Perez to be really getting challenged by his teammate. I mean, I don't think it's there yet, but if we get to the end of the year and Ocon is matching him on points and is regularly finishing in front of him, then
when you're a Ferrari, you think, wonder. I don't think they'll sign either of them, but if you're a top team, you'll want a driver for the future. I could see him at Renault if Kubica doesn't come back.
Yep, for sure.
Although he's with Mercedes now, isn't he? So
who's that?
Ocon. Isn't that how he ended up in Force India? Mercedes managed to.
Yeah, that's how he ended up there.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Renault probably still want him. They can make it happen if they want.
Well, and a rumor is that Renault are looking at Perez as well. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, but Ocon as a Frenchman, maybe just more appealing to them as well.
Yep.
So looking at the rest of the result from Spain, there wasn't much to see. Alonso finally finished his first race of the year, which is good for him. But it was pretty. He was 2 laps down. Did
he finish that race?
Yeah. Well, I think he retired on the penultimate lap, didn't he? But he was classified.
I think he it was another race where he finished 90% or something. The race, but he DNF, wasn't it?
I'm pretty sure he DNF'd. I can't remember him actually finishing.
Yeah, I think he put it into the garage with a couple of laps to go.
But his qualifying was godlike. Like we were all saying, there should be a national holiday in Spain for
that.
Yeah,
he made
that's right.
Q3.
So we probably should have mentioned that. But to see a McLaren in Q3 at Spain. Of all tracks in dry conditions was just phenomenal, and it does point to say that there's potential in that car that will probably never be unlocked, because it just won't work out for them. But
it also put Van Dorn in the shade. It's when I started thinking Van Dorn's going to have to up his game a little bit here, because
we will get to that. But Van Dorn has been. It's not so much that
he hasn't had a chance.
You can't expect him to be winning Grand Prix in that car, but he subbed in for one race last year at Bahrain, and he was immediately a match for Jensen, and he got points, and looked very good. This year in a tougher car to drive, Alonso is shading him quite a lot. It's almost Alonso versus Massa-esque kind of. The margin's actually quite large. When you look at the gap between Van Dorn, and it's right, it's too big. It's too big of a margin for Stoffel.
It's 0.5, 0.6 just about everywhere.
Yeah, I mean everyone knows Alo's a gun, but that doesn't look good for Stoffel.
No, it doesn't.
So I mean he'll be safe at McLaren for a few years, but if McLaren get competitive, that will become interesting, and it also hurts his chances of being looked at by a team further up the grid. Of course, when he's being shaded so bad. I mean. A lot of people still think Alo's best driver on the grid, but even with that, you can't be 3 seconds lap slower than your teammate, kind of thing. So, what we'll do now is we'll go over Monaco. Monaco's obviously fresh in everyone's minds now. Obviously, there was the Kimi Räikkönen put it on pole, and the F1 world rejoiced to think that.
And let's not talk about the rest of the race. I think we'll just leave it there. I think.
The flying fin was back, and I think everybody was happy to see it. And I think a Kimi win would have been good for the sport and good for Ferrari and good for everybody except Sebastian Vettel. But unfortunately, Seb showed his class. And
he was robbed. Kimi was robbed. He was just flat. Nah, he wasn't robbed. But
you're living up to your image on the on the thing now, Lewis.
He wasn't robbed, but the only issue I had is when they pitted Raikkonen. They either needed to pit him as they come up to the Sauber and the McLaren the first time, or they needed to wait a couple laps until they knew they were going to clear.
Yeah,
that was it.
That's the only part of it that doesn't make any sense when they pitted Kimi, because it was still the optimal strategy. Well, you'd think that Seb would have cleared him either way, based on whether he'd pitted before or after. But it still didn't make sense that they put him out right behind traffic.
Especially at Monaco. Like, I could maybe sort of get away with it at Canada or something like that, but at Monaco to pit him then, it just, to me, it just...
It felt like old Ferrari, where there was a right and wrong decision to make, and just like Ferrari of last year, they made the wrong one every time. And this time it was to say, oh, we need to protect from the undercut from Bottas and Verstappen. I mean, and look, everybody liked to play the hero and say, oh, the undercut was never a thing; it was always the overcut. Yeah, but Bottas followed Verstappen in, didn't he? And this is the team that won the last 3 championships.
No, well, not Bottas. Verstappen followed Bottas in.
No. Max was the first to pit.
Was he?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he triggered it.
Yeah,
okay. Right.
Max was the trigger.
Was he?
Yeah,
he wasn't happy about it.
Yeah,
he was a bit triggered.
Max pitted 32, Bottas 33, Raikkonen 34, and then Ricciardo 38 and Vettel 39. So, everybody, as I said, everyone was playing the hero and saying, "Oh, look, we all knew the overcut was going to work." Croft sitting there pompously, playing with the lapels of his sports jacket. Carrying on saying, "Oh, everyone knew the overcut was going to be the thing here." It's like, well, no. Then if everybody knew the overcut was going to work, why did Bottas follow Verstappen in? The fact is, people thought the undercut was going to work because it usually doesn't, Monaco. So,
or anywhere, in fact,
you can't argue Ferrari's idea, but you can argue with them following through with that when it was putting him in traffic.
It was just the execution of it. Like, they just needed to do it a couple laps earlier or a couple laps later. Like, that was it.
Yeah, so I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that. But I think Kimi lost on pace because Seb showed how good he really was. When Kimi capable of doing the lap times that Seb was once Kimi was out of his way. Yeah, I mean, Seb.
Maybe.
Yeah, Seb did a cracking job, and he earned that. He earned that win for that. Yeah. And and the other thing that's got to be mentioned as well is that how good Ricciardo was. He stayed out on the overcut, of course, and he did some absolutely cracking laps as well that were faster than anything Kimi was doing, let alone Seb.
He almost threw it away again, though.
Yeah, he did. He almost binned it out of centre vote. So. But he's been a bit ragged this year, which has been interesting because he was the opposite of that for the last few years. So
might be a bit of desperation creeping in.
Yeah, and that's for the same thing that's applying to Hamilton, I think.
It'd be
impatience.
Yeah,
impatience, frustration, and then I think he's in a car that's not as fast, so he just feels that he has to try and push a bit more as well.
Yep,
yeah,
for sure.
He probably feels compelled to make up the difference.
So the other notable mentions at Monaco are, of course, first of all, McLaren in qualifying, who showed that for everybody who's been rubbishing their chassis all year to eat some humble pie, because obviously Stoffel, who has been slower than Fernando all year, and Jensen, who hadn't driven the car since November.
I think that includes you, Webby. You never.
Yep.
You didn't rate the chassis.
No, I'll own up to that. But they got.
I want to see a photo of you eating this humble pie.
Well, hopefully it's delicious. But they both made Q3. I mean, obviously it was worth nothing because of the penalties they had, but they both made Q3. And it does make you ponder maybe that chassis is actually pretty handy. And being let down on circuits that require power, particularly when you consider that you've got like a driver who hadn't driven in 6 months and a guy who's been struggling with pace making into Q3. You then also wonder what could have the other guy done. The other guy who was over in America.
Who was failing in America.
Won it easily.
So we're about to get to Sir Alonso himself, but it was a good sign from McLaren, and if Honda can keep throwing engine components at that car this year, regardless of the penalties, and get to the end of the year and actually look like they found a bit of performance, then McLaren becomes a positive place. Because, they haven't forgotten how to build a good car. And I think that Zach Brown's going to do good things with that team. And I've got hope for the future. But it will depend on how long it will be before key people like Alonso run out of patience with Honda.
Well, he's already run out of patience. We've heard it multiple times on, team radio and in press conferences.
Yeah.
Maybe India's just sort of giving him a new lease on life, but we are about to come up to Montreal, so maybe that'll go away very quickly.
Yeah, I'm pretty
Yeah.
Montreal's come at the worst time for them. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
They've just got their hopes up, and it's about to get absolutely smashed.
Particularly that, as Greg alluded to earlier in the podcast, was that the Montreal upgrade was cancelled from Honda. So yeah, that's not good. But hopefully they do get it at some point, and they'll take penalties galore this year. But if they can actually show some fight at the end of the year and look like they're closing the gap, then I don't know. I feel like McLaren could make something out of it next year, but we'll see.
See where they're adding Singapore. That'll be interesting, I think.
All right, well, that's got us up to date with the season thus far. But one footnote to Monaco was I was really impressed by Hamilton's race. I mean, to start where he did, and then to finish seventh. I don't think he could have got anything more out of that than what he did in a car that he was struggling with. Yeah, and he kept his nose clean all day and done. It was a good damage limitation race for him on a day where his championship rival won.
It was ragged though in quali. Well, I don't know what the deal was there, but
Yep, it wasn't a good weekend, but it was a good race.
But even then, in the race, he was stuck behind.
Everyone was stuck behind everyone.
Yeah, everyone's stuck.
I know, but he never really made an impression. He was stuck behind Kvyat, I think it was, for pretty much the entire race.
I think that he was more worried about bagging as many points as he could, rather than actually flat out racing lots of people.
Yeah, it was interesting watching him play the percentage game like that. You don't see that very often from him.
No, you don't.
It could have been really useful for him to play that game at certain points in, say, 2007.
Yep, and Sanrako's mentioned that he likes Sainz in Monaco. I like Sainz everywhere. I reckon Sainz is one of the best drivers on the grid. Get that kid in a race-winning car pronto.
He should go to McLaren.
I said a race-winning car, not a race-retiring car.
They've won races.
So have Williams.
He'll become the new Alonso.
Yeah.
There we go.
In fact, rewind to 2008. So's Toro Rosso. So actually, I said races, so that's actually plural. So that's not correct. All right, so so that's caught us up to date with the season so far. So what I wanted to mention now, just briefly, because it will be nothing but plaudits. But how good was Fernando at the Indy 500?
It was pretty good.
Although
I felt bad.
Shut up, Luce.
Well, that's the thing. Didn't a rookie finish on the podium?
Yes, he did.
There's no podium,
Yep.
but Alonso got the rookie of the race or year thingy award, which I thought was a bit,
Yeah, I mean he's a
rookie, but he's driving for a top team.
To be fair, he screwed up his penultimate restart, and that probably cost him his chance of being in that fighting pack at the end. He probably would have finished. He probably would have finished out maybe fifth at best. I mean, you never know how these would have.
What would we know? That was our first full oval race.
That's very true. Yeah. So Sanrocco said he was right behind Sato when his engine gave up. He could have won it. Yeah, I think so. Sato had a mighty finish to that race, mind you, and it's a bit different in those last few races. I mean, you're actually in North America and I'm not, so you probably know more than I do. But yeah, I don't know. He flubbed his penultimate restart, and I felt like that was the bit that hurt him. And then obviously the bit that truly hurt him was when his engine blew up. So, but it was really, really good to see. I thought it was great to see an F1 driver go over and do the 500 and to do as good as what he did. But that leads me into the next part, which is Hamilton then bagging IndyCar by saying, "Oh man, look, if Fernando can go over there and finish on and be on the second row, it doesn't really say much for IndyCar now, does it?" Thoughts?
Well, I think it comes back to what Greg touched on. When you get a drive in a top team, and this is regardless of what series you're in, anyone, it could be British touring cars, V8 supercars, GP2 or F2, or Formula One. If you're in a top car, you're gonna do well. If you have any kind of talent. He was in a top team. So.
Yeah, and another thing that when I showed you the new Dallara IndyCar, there was a separate video that I saw that was recommended to me, and I remember seeing it, where Michael Schumacher in around 2001, I think, was asked whether he wanted to do the Indy 500, and he said, no, it's too dangerous, and they're all second-rate drivers, it'd be a step down for me. So it's not without precedent, I must say.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna hammer Hamilton too much about it. Formula One is supposed to be the pinnacle, And I've just linked you guys to this video, but
I think there's no doubt that the average level of the driver in Formula One is higher than probably every other series in the world. But for
just different.
Yeah, but for me, a great driver is a great driver no matter what they're in. I think that Scott Dixon could do very well in Formula One if he had have pursued that when he was younger. I think he could have had a very good F1 career, merely because a good racing driver's got good feel for a car. And there's no doubt that Scott Dixon's good. Having said that, Sebastian Bourdais won Champ Car and IndyCar 400 million times, and then
mind you, he won it at a time when ovals weren't really the Champ Car thing. That was during the split.
Yep, for sure. But in Formula One, admittingly, his teammate went on to win 4 world championships. But he never set the world on fire in Formula. He was unlucky. He was unlucky at that race where Sebastian won in the Italian Grand Prix in 2008. I think
he qualified fourth. And
yeah,
he had a problem on the grid.
Yeah, that's right. He didn't. He could have actually been on the podium in that race. They could have even won too, because Toro Rosso had tremendous pace that weekend. So
Bourdais was very unlucky, including at Spa.
Yes, yeah, very true. So Bourdais,
he was crying after that race, wasn't he? He's in like third or something.
Yeah, he was in a good position in that last lap with all the rain and everything. They all came flying past him because I think he's still on dry tyres.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he went from third to be out about ninth or something like that. Yeah. So Bourdais, and if you say that Bourdais and Dixon are and even if you think of a guy like Montoya was a guy who came from winning the Indy 500 in Formula One. He had a good Formula One career. Having said that, he was blessed with a good car whilst he was in Formula One.
What about Lewis's juxtaposed head on that old mate there, Villeneuve? I assume that's who that
World
is.
champion. Cannot say anymore. World champion.
That's right.
Terrible driver.
Yep. So
he was so terrible that he put a 99 BAR on the second row.
He then also buried a couple of BARs into the wall at Eau Rouge. Having a bet with Ricardo Zonta.
Well, wouldn't you after the year you'd had? I don't think you'd even finished at that point of the year, so it's just like, well, stuff it. I'm not going to finish anyway. I might as well just have a crack at going flat out at Eau Rouge, eh?
Man, Jacques.
What you're saying is that he put a Honda, a useless Honda, higher than Alonso did.
Oh wow,
he's better than Alonso.
They were running Supertech engines that year.
Oh, what the hell's a Supertech engine?
It's It wasn't a Renault.
It's a 97 Renault.
Yeah.
Oh, like a Mechachrome or
a rebadged hunk of junk. Yes, and I was going to mention JV as well. I'm getting attacked on all sides because Senraku's mentioned JV, probably showing his proud Canadian blood. Don't worry, JV gets lots of love here, mainly because 1/3 of this podcast would probably have JV's children if he was capable.
No, we were just giving JV shit. What are you talking about?
So yeah, no, Villeneuve was clearly very good, and I think the Villeneuve story was good. I wouldn't mind talking about that one day, but the Villeneuve story was good mainly because he got a Villeneuve a world championship when his dad so deserved one. So, but Jacques was a good driver. He's such an enigma and a frustration though, because to think he probably could have achieved more in Formula One if he hadn't have gone to do the BAR venture with Craig Pollock.
Oh, fucking Craig Pollock.
Yeah. So
take him out back.
He's gonna walk across a highway. So he's a frustration. So anyway, I think we can all agree that the JV story was a good one that the Alonso story was a good story for Formula One, to see a car driver go to Indy 500.
Well, it's a good story for racing, I reckon.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I think that do I think that in general IndyCar drivers are as good as the cream of the F1 field? Probably not.
No, of course not.
Because I think it's probably harder to get there. But do I think that makes IndyCar drivers bad drivers? Not at all. I think some of those guys are supremely talented and very brave, I might add.
Yeah, not only are they talented, to do oval racing in open wheel cars is, in my opinion, insane.
It's insane.
It is insane.
Yeah. And so to say does being brave make you good? I don't know, but I respect those guys a lot for what they do. So the next one, so obviously there was a bit of retaliation of a criticism of Hamilton back from IndyCar that said, well, at least imagine showing up when all you have to do is beat your teammate to win the championship and you fail to do it. I think that's a bit harsh because it undersells Rosberg and doesn't take into account that Formula One season is very long. and attrition generally plays a part like it did last year for Hamilton, and that
Hamilton did beat him twice the 2 years before that as well.
That is also correct.
The thing with the IndyCar season as well is if you're anywhere halfway decent and you somehow string a consistent season together, you'll probably win the championship because none of them can put a season together.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, if you've got...
And then even if you do, like Juan Montoya did, and there's double points in the final round, you get screwed over.
They still got that rule.
I don't know if they.
I think they might have gotten rid of it after that.
I hope they did. But, I mean, the other thing is, of course, is that, in Formula One, you've only got one teammate, whereas in IndyCar, if you're Penske or something, you might have 3 or 4. So that can work either against you, because obviously everybody's got a good car like you do, or it can work for you if you're a chance at the championship and they're not, and they can all play blocker for you. So,
IndyCar's just a different beast.
And now, so anyway, we'll move on from that because there's not too much to be said about that. But the big news of the day, yesterday, to a Formula One car for the first time since his accident in 2011, Robert Kubica.
What a ledge!
Was it 20? No, it was 2011 that he had his accident, wasn't it? It was the start of 2011 before the first race.
Yep.
And and that was always so. I'll start this one off, but it was always so gutting to see a guy who had so much potential, and a guy who was just as good as Hamilton. Came up with Hamilton, Vettel. This is a guy who was rumored to have a contract for Ferrari for 2012. Life could have been very much different for him if he hadn't had that crash and effectively wrecked his right arm. But to see him do 115 laps in a Formula One car at Barcelona.
That was Valencia, I think.
Was it Valencia, was it? Sorry.
Yeah.
Which is a bit more... the corners aren't as fast, but it's a lot busier. It
has the hairpins, and the hairpins are what rumoured to be causing him trouble.
So I heard that his main problem was that with the way his right arm is now, he wasn't able to drive it. He wasn't able to drive a single seater with his arm straight enough to be able to have movement in the cockpit. So the reason the hairpins were a problem was because he couldn't actually maneuver his arm. So I think he's been doing physio on it for years to try and achieve that. And then that's where he drove, I think, an F3 car last year, and he drove... he's been in a simulator a lot.
He must have known something after his LMP1 test, because he was going to race LMP1 this year, and just before it started, he pulled out of it.
Yeah.
He must have known that he must be serious about this.
Yeah.
He must be serious about this. Is all I can think. And there was no media allowed at that test. So Renault was serious about it as well.
I think that there is every possibility that if he thinks that he can do it, that he will get a gig at Renault next year.
Yeah, from what I've heard, he was quicker than Sirotkin.
Was he there as well, was he?
He drove the car as well, yeah. And someone else. I think there was 3 of them there, I think. And,
the third guy's just a Randy, who cares?
I honestly I can't remember.
Nico Hulkenberg.
There you go, Sanraku said it as well. So, yeah, and it'll be... Yeah, I hope he...
Well,
I hope they flick Palmer. To be honest, they can flick him now for all I care, and just let Kubica settle in for 6 months.
Surely it couldn't be as bad,
It can't be any worse, can it?
You're better off taking a chance on just about anyone else. Like, you could bring Pastor Maldonado back, and he'd do better than what Palmer is right now.
And even if he wasn't, I think we can all agree that we would love to just see how salty the British press would be about it.
I can see the back page now. Unlucky would be the big headline.
They'll be talking about it on Thursday at Montreal. Oh, how sad and all this.
Yeah. So I'm just reading through a story about Kubica's comments from his testing, where he said, for him it was an important day from an emotional point of view. It's been a long time away from the paddock.
Happy.
Yeah, he said that he felt it showed him everything that he had lost, like what he missed out on in Formula One in the last 5-6 years. I think that he's serious about a comeback, and I hope that.
Why wouldn't he be?
Yeah,
I can just imagine how gutting it would be for him emotionally. I've really felt for him these last few years.
Yeah, and Bat Permain said that his performance was really, really good. So yeah, and if it's rumored that he was faster than Sirotkin, then Sirotkin's been getting regular seat time. Sirotkin's fast enough to be in a Grand Prix now. So I mean, if Kubica can be can handle the weekend. And look, I think it's obvious. I think that's what Renault are going for. They condensed a whole Grand Prix weekend into a single day for Kubica.
He did race runs. He did quali sims. He did practice starts. He did everything.
Yeah.
Look, if you're doing 115 laps in a day, you're not fucking around.
What I'm saying, and from my point of view, is that Renault. If Renault weren't serious, why would they give him 115 laps? They just give him a couple of show runs as a nice thing to do, and but they gave him a whole Grand Prix distance in a single day. So I think Renault's got a lot of affection for him as well. So a dark horse thing for next year could very well be the return of Robert Kubica.
I don't even think it's a dark horse.
It's not a dark horse thing. What a great driver lineup it'll be.
Yeah, I know. I was just about to say the same thing. Imagine Nico Hülkenberg and Robert Kubica as your driver lineup if you're Renault in 2018.
Well, that's if we've got to see if he's going to be competitive first.
I think he will be.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't really care either way. I'd just like to see him keep racing in Formula One.
Yeah, me too. I think
he's one of those guys that didn't look like he suffered any of the bullshit. Like he wasn't in it for the fame or the money or anything. He was just there. He's just there to drive,
And he he deserves something after 2008 as well.
He was shafted by BMW.
He was brilliant in 2010 as well. Don't forget.
Yeah, and Toto Wolff still stands by the fact that he thinks that if Kubica had have been in that 2012 Lotus, Toto Wolff is convinced he would have won the championship in that 12 Lotus.
I don't get where that came from. I did read that this morning on Autosport somewhere, but yeah, it's fanciful.
The other thing to remember, of course, is that Toto Wolff and Robert Kubica are very, very good friends.
Are they?
Yes, they are. So, yeah, it is.
How do they know each other?
Oh, I don't know. But, I mean, Toto Wolff's not that old when you compare him to... Like, he's only in his 40s, so he's not that much older than a lot of the drivers. Particularly Kubica, who's now... Kubica's 32, so he's not... Obviously, he's lost 6 years.
Still got 10 years left.
Yeah, I think so.
He can go to 42.
Yeah, so...
Well...
Had plenty of rest.
Yeah, we'll see. But
I hope we see him again.
It would be a terrific sport story for him to come back to the sport and achieve something. Like if he got the fight for a championship or at least get a win. Imagine how emotional that would be for Formula One. If Robert Kubica got a win.
I think he just makes it back and is competitive. I think that'll be just good enough in itself.
I think Kubica's a gun, and I always rated him. I thought he was good, and just generally came across as a nice guy. So. That would be great for the sport. So that leads on to the next thing, which is obviously the rumours going around, and unsurprisingly, really, that Renault may very well shaft Jolie and Palmer very soon.
Maybe they might want to test Kubica a bit more yet.
Oh no, I mean I don't think Kubica. I think it's likely he'll be replaced by Sirotkin. Yeah, I think that.
You reckon? Oh, really? They're going to drop him for Sirotkin this year?
Well, apparently there's rumours on the things I've heard are Sirotkin, or you may very well see. I'm trying to think of some of the names I've seen now. Some of the recent guys out of the sport, like Felipe Nasser, may very well be parachuted into that seat. Mainly
temporarily.
Yeah, till the end of the year. Yeah,
they're that unhappy with him that they have someone in for the rest of the season, and that's it.
I think so, wow. and I think he's underperforming that badly that he justifies that. Particularly, do they think that Felipe Nasser is going to be as slower, just as slow behind Hülkenberg as what Palmer is? I mean, Palmer looks so uncompetitive compared to Hülkenberg. And I mean, I think we all rate Hülkenberg to some level, but it's not like Hülkenberg's been out there setting the world on fire for the last 6 years. He's been very solid. But
him and Perez. There wasn't much to call between them, was there?
Yeah, so. that's right. So obviously,
you're talking the upper tier of the midfield.
I mean, you're talking guys like
at worst
Hülkenberg, Perez. I think I'd rank Carlos Sainz ahead of both of those two at the moment. But certainly those...
Maybe Renault could chuck $1 million at him.
It surprises me, but I wouldn't argue with it. I've been joking about it, get rid of him, but it's good to see that they're actually thinking about it. I mean, it was just that it's funny how there was no one available at the end of last year to take the seat.
Well, apparently it was because Magnussen wouldn't take the contract.
Well, no, he ran because they were taking too long to make the call on him.
No, well, they only
Ocon,
they only offered him a season. They only offered Magnussen a season. He wanted more. And then in the end, he got sick of trying and signed for Haas on a multi-year deal. So,
Don't blame him.
No, and then obviously they probably for similar reasons as to why Williams wanted Massa. That Renault wanted Palmer, but the problem is that Hulkenberg's come in and I've never understood this idea of Massa knows the baseline from last year, so he knows we're improving. Bullshit. A good driver knows good things.
Massa's done well though.
Massa has done well. I don't disagree with that.
The decision to keep Massa totally vindicated as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you compare that to Palmer.
Yeah,
it's just I think there was just no other option to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I even
soon. Surely they could have, even Nazar, they could have chucked him in for a season and he would have done better. He's got money behind him. Surely it's Nazar's been driving a Sauber.
Yes, he does. Yeah,
he has to.
Yeah, Jonathan Palmer's a very rich man. He brings a reasonable amount of money for sure. So yeah, it's one of those things where Palmer just doesn't look like he'll ever be good enough for the sport. And I think that's what it comes down to. Yeah, and I think that's what it comes down to. So, Renault may very well move. Other than that, there's not really much news doing the paddock. It's pretty quiet at the moment. Obviously, everybody's just salivating at this Hamilton and Vettel championship run.
Hamilton has to get his shit together if we're going to see that.
Yeah, he does. If he bounces back this weekend, then
he likes Montreal.
He does. He's got Montreal, except sometimes in the pit lane.
That's just.
And so I think that'd be good. So turning to Montreal now, obviously, we'll wrap up with this with Canada. I think Canada in a lot of ways is like Hungary, where it always tends to throw up one of the weirder races of a season.
Yeah.
Like even in a quiet season, Canada tends to show up, with a weird result. Or at least a crazy race of some description.
Yeah, 2011 is the perfect example. For most of the year, you got Seb out there demolishing everybody, and then you got a 4-hour race. Jenson Button smashes through half the field.
Literally.
Takes his teammate out, takes Alonso out, passes the car on the last lap, and wins the race.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
But more recently, I can't really remember. Do either of you remember last year's race? I know Hamilton was on pole.
Yeah. So remember Ferrari were going to win it, and they made the big strategic misstep of putting Seb onto a 2-stop. And then there were the seagulls.
Oh, yeah, right. Seagulls.
Yeah, but remember,
that's right. Yeah. There was the virtual safety car.
Yeah, so Seb jumped them both at the start, and he was leading the race. And there was a bit of contact at turn 1 between Hamilton and Rosberg, but Seb was leading, and then Ferrari 2 stopped him, if I remember rightly, and it was a mistake because Mercedes 1 stopped them 1 easily.
Yeah, didn't they pit Seb under the virtual safety car?
Yeah, and everyone thought, master stroke, and then he pitted again later, and it was like, oh no, what have you done, Ferrari? Yeah, but I think they had to, because I'm pretty sure he stayed on the same compounder tyre that he started the race on, so it was always a given that was going to happen. So
I think they didn't have much choice, because I think Merck were going to do the opposite of whatever they did under the virtual safety car.
So and then obviously we had in 2014 we had we had Ricciardo win his first race there with the brake problems that Mercedes had.
Some great racing in that one too.
Yep, we certainly did.
4 cars could have won that race at the end. You had Rosberg desperately trying to hold on. You had.
He wasn't going to win because he had his issue, didn't he?
Yeah, but he was holding on, and you had I think there was a Force India there. There was a Williams there.
Perez, Massa, and Ricciardo, and then there was the huge accident on the penultimate lap between Massa and Perez.
Yeah, going into turn 1, that's right.
Yeah, so
who says it's rain forecast?
That will be interesting. That may very well play. That may very well.
Mercedes hands.
No, it may bring Red Bull. It may bring Red Bull a little bit into it, but probably not.
The reason I say I think it'll bring Mercedes into it is that I'm not sure with their long wheelbase that track's going to suit them this year, and I reckon they're going to struggle a bit.
The other thing that will start coming into play now with both Mercedes and Ferrari, just as it is with everybody else, is the component usage and when they're going to start taking penalties. Because I think all of the manufacturers so far this year are using more components than they really would want to. Ferrari's already burned
Ferrari have
through.
used quite a few.
Yeah, I mean they said that was normal rotation, but I don't know. I don't know if I buy that. I honestly don't know if I buy that.
I thought they were like legitimately having issues where they had to replace turbochargers and things
Yeah,
like
but
that.
they were saying, but we're doing that as part of rotation. It's fine. Don't worry about it. And I'm going, yeah, it doesn't look like it's fine to me. It looks like that you're going to end up coming across a problem with these things. So, particularly, it's not like they've been fault free. Kimi's had problems that have retired him from races.
I don't know why you'd be talking about rotation and stuff. You'd want that stuff to be as developed as possible now that the token system's gone.
And that's the core reason why it makes no sense.
Yeah,
it's not so much the token system; it's the engines and gearboxes must last. I think was it 4 this year? 4 races.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like you'd want to hold off on introducing anything into the pool until you've fully developed whatever you want your next.
Yes, that's exactly right. Why would you commit yourself to using the same iteration of turbocharger for the whole season just because of rotation? I say that with quotation marks. So
perhaps they're committed that at some point we're going to cop a penalty, and when they do, that's when they're going to introduce a new part.
Yeah, but it makes no sense. But them saying we're just going through for normal rotation, and our goal was to always use 4 turbochargers in the first 6 rounds. It's going, yeah, but that means if you introduce another one later on, you're immediately going to take a penalty for it. Whereas if you had to just used 2, you've got 2 slots there where you could introduce a new iteration of the turbocharger. So I don't think their explanation makes sense in any way, shape, or form.
Oh well, we'll see.
It's
honestly, probably something we won't see come into play until maybe around the summer break or afterwards.
Yeah, and obviously Mercedes aren't fault-free either. So, and interested to find out if they do find anything wrong with Hamilton's chassis post-Monaco, if he did actually have legitimate problems with his car.
I thought they said they knew, but it was a setup problem. It was locked in Parc Fermé.
Yeah, it was a setup problem. So that's what I read as well. But be interested to see if they actually find something as to why it was so horrendous on Saturday in Monaco. So, all right.
Problem with the driver that they'd set up in the cockpit and new one.
All right. Well, what we'll do now is we're coming up on an hour and a half, so we'll finish up. But we'll finish off with predictions for the weekend, and I'll start off so that you guys aren't wandering into the unknown. I think that this weekend we'll see the return of Lewis Hamilton to the front of the field, but I think it will be very, very tight knit. And if either Mercedes or Ferrari make a mistake, then they'll be gifting something to the other driver. And I think that sooner or later, both Ferrari and Mercedes are going to start facing icky questions about how Bottas and Raikkonen factor into this championship. We haven't seen this for a while, where you've legitimately got, we're probably since 2011 maybe, where they're obviously Ferrari telling Massa to move out of the way. 2010, sorry, yeah, that's right. The last time we legitimately seen teams making tough decisions against drivers having good races for the sake of a championship. So, anyway, my prediction is Hamilton for the pole and the win, but it won't be easy. Loose.
All right,
I'll go ahead.
This is 2 parts. If it's dry, I'm tipping Hamilton for pole, but Vettel for the victory. And Hamilton will be second and Bottas will be third. If it's wet, I honestly think Max Verstappen will win the race if it's wet. I don't like him, but I reckon he will.
Personal feelings certainly don't come into it.
Have we?
No, but Red Bull themselves have been quite anonymous. Yeah.
There's not much to say, really.
No.
But I've got a similar thing. I think Hamilton or Bottas, depending on who's having set up issues for the pole position. But it's probably going to be Hamilton because it's just kind of what Montreal's like anyway. And then the race, I think, is going to come down to who throws it away strategically. Good chance of a safety car, so that's why I don't think it will just be a pure battle of speed between Ferrari and Merc. So whoever doesn't mess it up will win. But I don't expect Merc to be as dominant as they have been here in the past.
Oh, definitely.
We expected it in Russia and it didn't happen. I still think Ferrari had the faster race car.
Well, they did in early stages.
Yeah,
Obviously, Seb had his issues, but the second half they fixed it and it was faster.
Yeah, so it could be anything. Could be anything, and if it rains, then that's just something completely different. Can't predict. So.
All right, and will McLaren get their first point at Canada?
No. No chance.
Do I have to dignify that with an answer?
Probably
Never
not.
know, though. Stranger things have happened.
And at Canada, stranger things have happened.
Alo might have learnt how to get some top speed from Indy.
You gonna do cut the track?
Yeah, cut the track.
He starts driving down the straight with 45-degree angle on his wheel.
Yeah. Did you see his the radio message of him when they're under caution? By the way, where are they telling him who was in front of him and who he had to pass to get to the win? And he was just like, "We would pass all of them."
Oh, hang on. So before we finish up, we've only got one. We've got only one question from the gallery, which is, what is more likely? And a McLaren points question. Or Stroll points? Actually, I think this. I'll answer first, and I'll hand it over to Luce. I think it's more likely, from an odds perspective, that Stroll will score points in Canada than McLaren.
Disagree. Ayla will get some points.
I didn't throw to you, Greg.
Don't care, mate.
All right, Greg, go ahead.
Speaking of throwing, I think Stroll will throw it into a wall somewhere, which is why Ayla will get points.
But will it be
likely for Ayla to get points?
But will it be the Wall of Champions?
No.
Well, it could be anything.
It's more likely to be the wall on the exit of Turn 4.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But he could crash it anywhere. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the barriers anyway.
So, all right, if we had to give it money, I'd say there's a 10-1 chance. Oh, sorry, I'll go 15-1 chance that Stroll scores points and an 18-1 chance that McLaren scores points. What numbers would you put on it, Greg? Or are they both just 500-1? It's like one of those betting. It's like one of those betting agencies where it's like, we wouldn't even give you numbers for that.
I'm gonna put my faith in the rain and Fernando and say it's a 10-1 chance.
Oof, gone in tight.
It's 20-1 for Stroll to get in the points, and if it rains, it's 30-1.
I'm sorry, Senraku. I know we're just sapping your confidence here. I'm sorry. And Luce.
It is tough. That is a really tough question. But I think this is what's going to happen.
Believe in McLaren.
If Fernando Alonso finishes, he'll get points because Stroll will crash his car at a key point in the race, and it will gift Alonso.
Alonso's going to take
track position.
It'll be like Singapore 08 all over again.
Mate, it would be like something. Someone would have to. It'd be like parting the Red Sea. It's not going to happen.
I think it's a much better chance if it rains because they're going to have massive fuel saving problems, McLaren. So
yeah, I think they definitely will.
Along with power, it needs to rain.
Oh dear. All right. Well, I mean, that was the only question we got thrown at us through the thing. So we're just about right on an hour and a half. So I think this has been a good debut podcast that we've done here. I like the format. I like the way it went on. So if you're watching, make sure you throw it a like and throw a subscribe to let us know that you liked it. And we'll do another one post Canada. Probably same time next week if I had to guess. So thanks everybody who tuned in. I'll leave Luce your final thoughts.
My final thoughts on what?
Just anything, mate. Just say anything. F1 related, hopefully.
This is the weekend. Kimmy's going to do it. He's going to do it. My blind faith will see him through for a fluke victory.
Have you stopped sitting on your chair, hugging your knees, rocking back and forth yet after Monaco? Or
but will you stop joking about my PTSD? All right, just
stop. And Greg, your final thoughts.
This has been a good first stream. I've had got 11,000 points being AFK in armor, and I'm looking forward to another great Sep victory.
Damn it! I should have done that. Believe in the McLaren that believes in the Alo that believes in the Honda.
Who the hell do you think we are?
Yeah, who the hell do you think we are? Well, ladies and gentlemen, my final thoughts are that I just hope it's a good race. I mean, really enjoying the season so far, and I think Canada will be another cracking race. I would really, really like to see Bottas and or Kimi put their foot forward into the championship ring and have a go. And actually get a result and put pressure on their teammates, because at the moment it does look like it's going to strip out to be a 2-horse race pretty quickly. Having said, obviously Bottas was better than Hamilton at Monaco and at Russia, but I hope that one of those guys really, either Raikkonen or Bottas steps into the fight, because the more drivers the better. So thanks everybody who tuned in, and we'll see you same time next week.